content of this channel is for mature audiences. Parental discretion is advised. You're tuned in to the Green Gorilla channel. Please make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell notification button. And please, feel free to share the video. Thank you. What's good, everybody? You know what time it is, man. I'm GG, man. You tuned in to the Green Gorilla channel. It's the place where black men can express themselves freely, straight up with no chasers, man. Real talk. It's been a while since I've been on, so if you can hear me, put a 1 in the chat. Because, every now and then, man, I experience technical difficulties, and I just want to make sure that everybody can hear me and that we're proceeding as we should. That's awesome. I see a 1 already. Thank you, sir. The general. All right. So, first off, I always want to give a shout out to the haters. What's cracking? What's good with y'all, man? I know y'all lurking like the ops that you are. What's up, ops? And if you haven't done so already, man, make sure you hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the bell notification button so you can stay abreast of what's cracking here on the Green Gorilla channel. And like I always do, I want to give a shout out to all the members of the Green Gorilla channel. And I haven't done this in quite a bit of time, so excuse me if I stumble and fumble on my way through it. But anyway, man, big up to Lee Ways, Electrician 480, Gabinga O, Herbert Lewis, Cutting Up with the Jones, Zanco, D. Scott, Julius Ferguson, and Lord Hamal. Big up. Big up to Path Guy, Black Swerve 404, Pete Rock, Tahuti of New Comet, Gold Professor, Brotherly Love, Aaron Peters, Barnolas, hiphop.ca TV, and Dar. Big up. Big up to Michael Ross, Vincent Lindsay, Michael Pierce, Beautiful Trauma, Quiz the Poet, Black Wizard 80OS, Jazz Tech, Shadow Observer, Sugar T, and Artisan MC. Big up. Big up to Nasiana, Kyle J. Sura, Kareem, Troy Warren, Jeff R., Mrs. K.P. Bailey, Ricky Dawson, Alan Wiley, The Face, and Mantis on Break. Big up. Big up to Life of Commerce, True 7360, Marvin Evans, A. Wilson's Ghost, Timothy Blewett, Jeffrey Speed. Big up. Big up to Marvin Battle Jr., Mark Holt, John J., Afro Troop TV, Adam, BGS Ibmore, Ignatz Mouse, Ryan Peaks, Papa Dida, Scott Haywood, and Black Uru Strikes. Big up. Big up to Dr. Tree 33, Leroy Honeycutt, Broken Blade, Supertech, 77 Base X, Brian McMurray, K-Ron S, Anthony Davis, Seven Coast Dojo, Charles Rogers, Rick Ross, and Sandra Jean. Big up. Big up to Charles Gilmore, Patricia Colley, Greg, Barry Little, Mr. Valentino, Jason Hales, Black Men Being Brutally Honest, Cameron 87, Dr. Rock, Mark Swift, Odd Collard, Donald Watts, Coach Hotep, Old Soul Chief, Mr. Blue Collar, and I'm Just Jules. Big up. Big up to TD Hip Hop Media, Drew Main, Mr. Heat, Sir Anthony, MLR, Universal 178, Rasheed Barnes, Aaron Smith, DH, C Truth the Revelator, Aaron Infinite, Dr. T. Hasan Johnson, Kalanja Kala, Hostile Adept, and W. Pierre 1. And on my Patreon side, I want to give a shout out to Keith Bass Jr., Nick, Malcolm Smith, Rock One, Albert C., Dr. Ben Vincent, I Am the Light of My Father, Waffle Weave, William Joyner, Tyrone Hampton, Darnell Smith, Excalibur, Anu 219, Pursuer Prisoner, Taz, Dragon 59, Adrian Hicks, Jay Bailey, Mr. Michi, NEU, Mo Mal, and the Sangwa. Big up to all y'all. Thank you. And I can't forget my brothers in heaven, David Carroll, Forrest Windu, and Kevin Samuels, man. Big up to all of them, man. And if you want to know how you can support the Green Gorilla channel on an ongoing basis, man, this is how you do it, and then we'll get back to the proceedings this afternoon, man. Be back. What's good, everybody? I'm the G with a PhD, and you're tuned in to the Green Gorilla channel. the place where black men can express themselves freely. Straight up, no chaser. Today, I want to introduce you to my new membership program that consists of 5 levels where you can invest in the Green Gorilla channel on a monthly basis and receive level-specific perks. Memberships are special because they improve the quality of the content of the channel and will help me to be able to keep the channel going. Now, to participate in the Green Gorilla channel membership program, all you have to do is hit the join button, which is located right next to the subscribe button on my channel page. Now, for all of my subscribers who decide not to participate in my membership program, nothing will change. The content will keep coming the way it always has. Thanks for watching, and be careful out here, people. Bless. All right, man, we back. You know who I be, man. I'm GG. You tuned in to the Green Gorilla channel. It's the place where black men can express themselves freely, straight up with no chasers, man. And we'll broach any subject. We don't care. You don't like it? If you're scared, go to church. Don't give a damn. We don't care, man. It is what it is. But I brought a special guest here today, man. You know him, man. He don't need an introduction, although he's going to get one. His name is Dr. Hasan Johnson. What's cracking with you, bro?
And what's good?
What's happening with you, bro?
Oh man, just chilling. Good to be in here, man. Appreciate it.
Oh, for sure, man. It's been a long time coming, man. We've been putting this off for quite a bit of time.
Indeed.
And look, let me just say this, man. Right now, we got 120 people watching. We only got 69 people that like the video, man. Hit the likes. Get them up. Stop watching passively, or if you don't like, hit the bottoms down button, thumbs down, hit something. Okay, that's what I'm asking. All right. So, man, look, we had a conversation the other day, man, about Umar,
right,
and Cynthia G, and Hope Giselle, and a whole bunch of other stuff, right? So we were having that conversation,
right.
But prior to having that conversation, you sent me a message, and it was a message of a young black person. I'm gonna call him a person at this point because I don't know what to call him. Okay, I'm not even trying to be facetious by saying this. Okay,
no, I get it.
You know, and you know, a lot of times I say things in jest. I can be mean spirited. I'm vulgar at times. But when I saw that video, man, I was highly disturbed. I was highly disturbed, bro. I'm not gonna even play games, man. I was like highly troubled by watching that, man. And I'm gonna play that video today.
Okay.
Now I don't know if they will, try to take the transmission to stream down because of me showing this. But if they do, just hang on tight. Because we'll be back to continuously talk about what, the problem is with this video and the problem with the culture that leads to these kind of situations. We just need to discuss it, okay? So before you even begin to speak, man, like, what are some of the ruminations that you have about any of this, bro?
Well, first and foremost, man, I wish we could have brother Dr. Neil here with us, but he's on a whole nother continent. So shout out to that brother.
Big up to Dr. Ronald Neal, man.
Yeah, man. My boy said he's having the time of his life. I said, man, you ain't.
Passport, bro, for real. He had his sandals on out there, like, hey, look, I'm out here in my sandals. He was, bigging up O'Shea or whatever the case may be. Big up to O'Shea as well. But, the whole point is he had his sandals on, man, out there kicking it in the, the motherland.
So, yeah, man, shout out to him. But as far as this, man, I make it a point because I have a few students, and I'm talking over 25 years. I may have had 2 students that identified as trans, and for the most part, I just try and call them by their name. So that means, and you really don't realize how comfortable pronouns are in communication until you make an effort to only call somebody by their name. But that's it. It is what it is. So watching what I think you about to show, it reads different. And this is what Dr. Umar was talking about. It reads different when you understand who you're talking to. If you watch the video once based on just what you assume to be true, it's one thing. When you understand the subtext, it reads a whole different way. And the other part of it is, man, I've had a few people say, well, I mean, you knew that such and such was trans. And I was like, no, I didn't. I didn't know at all until someone told me. Actually, I was on Obsidian show last weekend, and he was the one that told me. So I watched the whole video, and it never crossed my mind. And one of the things that made me consider is, we're in a time period where visibly you can't tell. Now, the first assumption you make is that means that you have trans that are emulating women that much better. Maybe, but is it also possible that there's a deep set masculinity in how our women even define Black womanhood that is playing out as well? I mean, Minister Jap kind of referred to it as transsexualized energy, and he wasn't talking about trans people. He was talking about Black women. So if this is the case, is there some cross energetic feed jumping off? I don't know. But all I can say is until somebody told me, I had no idea.
I really wasn't paying that close attention to the person's gender. I just assumed they were presenting as a woman, so I assumed okay that's a woman. Okay, I looked at the person that had some jagged edges on their face. I'm like, okay, well that looks yeah. She looks like a very masculine female, but nonetheless,
we've seen that.
Yeah, I mean, it's not as if that's not commonplace in today's culture to some degree anyway, but I didn't give it any attention or pay it any mind. But, like my thoughts about it, again, going back to, the conversation we had the other day, put it this way, you can't escape being a Black male by transitioning. You think you can, but it's very difficult to do. Now, for the most part, it's really insulting to have someone who was born a male to transition into a woman predicated upon the norms and the values associated with contemporary culture, and then start wagging your finger at Black men, acting as if they're regressive. That's some bullshit to me, man. That's absolute. Because, not everybody isn't in agreement with the current ideas related to trans persons, even women. Not everybody's on board with the logic, the ethics, and the mores associated with that whole movement. Not everybody is in agreement with that. And you can't force people to be in agreement with that. Now, you can respect them as persons and not violate them or do something that's, violent towards them. But you can't force someone to accept the fact that you are a real woman.
Right.
Like what kind of hubris do you have to try to force or thrust your particular way of life and your sexual representation on other people? That to me is just, I just don't get that.
You know how they're doing it now, though? What they're doing is they're saying because the suicide rates for trans folk is so high, and that has to do with being alienated socially, that you have to support them to allow them to adapt, allow them to feel accepted. Otherwise, you're contributing to the increased rates of death. That's the logic that's kind of being used. So you either support it or you're low key considered, part of a killer of sorts. And that's where they're going with the logic with this.
Yeah, so if you don't accept in and of itself, you're violent. You're creating the conditions of violence,
right,
in which these people experience oppression, marginalization, misrecognition, whatever the case may be. Right. And I want to give a shout out to Electrician 480. Thank you so much for the support, sir. Appreciate that. Thank you. But again, I want to show the video that you showed me, or that you messaged me with earlier. And, I'm going to pause at various points in it and provide some commentary as I go along. Okay?
Mhm.
So let's look at this thing, man. I'm gonna add it to the stream. Okay, so as you can see in the text, it says the following is a very vulnerable and personal account of my experience as a D-trans woman. So this is a person who had transitioned.
Okay, wait. Can I just say something real quick? I thought you were talking about the Umar Cynthia G video. So my comments earlier were referred to that. I wasn't talking about this video, but let's go.
Right. I assume that that's
Right.
why I say that didn't have, like, that video with Umar and that woman wasn't really, it wasn't, it didn't bother me, okay? Like I was bothered by this. This is a whole different animal here, okay? And I'm gonna explain to you why, even before I start, right? Before I even begin. One of the biggest challenges that any human being will face is their transformation from a child into an adult. Okay? That's just a fact. Now, putting aside legal descriptions and social definitions of what an adult is and the duties and the responsibilities an adult has, but merely on biological grounds, the metamorphosis from childhood to adulthood will be difficult. And for some, it will be an almost insufferable process.
Right.
I mean, those are just the facts of life. This is what, I mean, like, this is just how life is, okay? Now, this problem, this issue, this, transformation from prepubescence into adulthood, okay? It can only be exacerbated by politically problematizing the very thing towards which biology has designated you to be in your development. I mean, think about it. If you are born as a male, and in particular a black male, and you are repeatedly told that which you are developing into teleologically, naturally, is somehow fundamentally flawed, morally bankrupt, politically regressive, this is sure to have an intense effect on the disposition of the person who is having difficulty in making a transition from childhood, prepubescence, into adulthood. Do you see what I'm saying here?
Mm-hmm.
So what I'm basically talking about is a natural transition from prepubescence to puberty, not a gender transition from male to female or female to male. But when children are vulnerable and they are going through this peculiarly awkward stage in their lives, the last thing they need is nudging and encouragement from ideologues and zealots urging them to alter their genders. I mean, that to me goes without saying. Now, if a fully developed adult, a grown person, decides to change their sex or gender after reflection, then I see no problem with them going forward with irreversible sex assignment surgery. After all, it's your body, it's your choice. But the same cannot be said of a prepubescent child or someone who's in adolescence. Yep. It can't be said. I want you to think about this, Doc. We don't allow 14-year-olds to drive, do we?
Right.
Do we allow 14-year-olds to drive?
No, not at all.
No. Do we allow them to drink alcohol? Do we allow them to vote? Do we allow them to start lines of credit? Take on professions or make any autonomous decisions about their day-to-day lives. We do not. However, when it comes to gender and sex reassignment surgery, all of these proscriptions, not prescriptions, but proscriptions, things you're not allowed to do, become superfluous, unimportant. In essence, to promote a political stance or a set of norms for transgender adults, we have decided that children can be a testing ground for what is socially acceptable. This to me is exploitation at the highest level and ought to be categorically rebuked. That's just my viewpoint. Prepubescent children have become ground zero in the progressives' war for transgender rights, and to me, it is fundamentally immoral. That's just my viewpoint, okay? Now, maybe you have a different viewpoint, but that's my viewpoint. You can't take a prepubescent child and give them the power to make autonomous choices about their gender. That's especially when it comes to surgery, such that it can't be reversed. You got any thoughts about that, Doc?
There are few issues, and truthfully, I say few to be generous. There are few issues that a child should be allowed to make lifelong decisions about. You don't even let children make decisions like that about tattoos, let alone anything else. So, and I'm saying this also as a father, because I might have been indifferent to this prior to having a child, but after having a child and witnessing just how much innocence, for a lack of a better term, is part and parcel to childhood. To make a decision, or to allow that child to make a decision, especially without parental consent, involvement, because we're starting to see these cases happening where they're getting hold of, life-altering, biologically altering, means, pharmaceuticals, so on and so forth, procedures. They're getting access to this without parental involvement. And these kind of decisions are bound to cause serious problems. And we still don't know the long-term implications of many of these treatments 20, 30, 40 years later. But
So
to make these decisions at such a young age, it's setting up for a serious fall.
So one of the things that they do is they give kids what are called puberty blockers.
Right.
Okay? You have names for these drugs, right? Zoladex, Supprelin, Lupron Depot, Trailstar. Okay? These are drugs that they have given to prisoners who've committed acts of rape in order to, they call it a medical castration, so that you don't get an erection. Okay? They're giving these same drugs to prepubescent teens in order to basically suppress testosterone and estrogen so that they can delay puberty, so that if a kid has a question about what they want to grow into, if they want to be a woman or a man, they can delay the process. Now we talking about like teenagers. How, like, in what world is this morally acceptable? I'm just saying, like, to me, this is absolute nonsense. Now I can see an adult, a grown person, making this kind of decision about what they want to do with their bodies. But a 13, a 12-year-old? Make it make sense, man. I'm just saying, make it make sense to me. Make it make sense. So let's watch a little bit of this video, man. Check it out.
How do I love myself again? How do I feel connected to myself again? It's like I'm mourning an entire life that should have been mine. That was my birthright. I don't know how this happened to me. And I'm just so angry. And I'm so sad. Like, I just don't know how this happened. Like a virus or something. It just like infected me, and it happened so quickly. And it was like I was right there, like agreeing to every single thing. And I
That's why I say, Doc, this is painful to watch, man.
It is. It is. And we need to talk about that virus in a little bit, but go ahead.
don't know how that happened. Then now I can sit here and like look back and be like, why did I do that? It doesn't make any sense. None of it makes any sense. If I just would have waited. If I just would have waited. If I just would have waited and let myself heal. I can't have kids. I'll never lose my virginity. Like, I feel like I'm left to just like accept the scraps of the life that I could have had. I had this full life that I'm now having to mourn, while also living in the present moment with the life that like feels just like the scraps of what could have been.
Man, that's saying a lot.
Right.
That's saying a lot. Because think about it. If you cut and carve up a child's genitalia, a male anyway, I don't know what it's like for women, okay? I don't know what the process would be like for women transitioning into men and how reversible that surgery would be if it were performed. But as it pertains to a male, if you cut off his scrotum or his phallus, how do you reverse that?
Right.
You can't reverse it. So this person is lamenting. And this is a young individual, man. This person ain't even, I guarantee you they're not even 25 years old, man.
Right.
This is a person who is, for all intents and purposes, still a child.
Yeah.
And they will never be able to have children. Like the person said, because I don't know what to call them. They will never be able to lose their virginity according to their own, dictates about how that should be lost.
Well, I think that was meant in the conventional sense. I really do. But either way, whether it's conventional or non-conventional, it was said, I will not be able to lose my virginity. Can you fathom that in your early 20s? Can you fathom the reality of never being able to lose your virginity by your own definition in your early 20s? Never being able to have children because of a decision you made probably before this person was 20. Can you fathom that? The implications of that on life?
That's crazy, man. This is crazy. Now, again, if you're grown, you can do what you want to with your body. I have no problem with you doing. I mean, like it's your body, man. You can do whatever you want to with it. Okay. Now, I don't have to accept it. I don't have to like it. But I mean, it's your body, by the way. So I feel like, you can do what you want to with it. But creating a cultural climate in which 12 and 13, 14-year-olds are taking powerful drugs that block testosterone and estrogen, and then giving the green light for procedures that will create irreversible, life-altering circumstances for adolescents is crazy to me, man. And then if we say anything, then we become oppressive, hateful, and violent. What the fuck is that about, bro?
What makes these cases that much more difficult is there have been a number of them that I've come across where one parent, and I have to say it's usually the mother, one parent who is deep off into this gender ideology, this gender fluidity ideology, is actively involved with the transformation of a child, most of the time against the father's will. And there have even been some cases where the mother has taken the child across state lines, outside of the country, and fathers have had to watch this. And it's a difficult dynamic because this child has no idea what the lifetime implications of these discussions are, these decisions. No sense whatsoever.
And to me, it's just crazy, bro. Like, you can't drink, you can't drive, you can't vote, can't get a tattoo,
Right.
but you can cut your gonads off. You can reassign your sexual organs. Who benefits from this? Is the question I have to ask. Who's benefiting from this?
Well, we do know that the pharmaceutical industry is having a field day with a lot of this.
This is the dark side of gender politics. This is the ugliness that nobody wants to actually explore or have a discussion about, because what we want to do is recognize and affirm people who have actually made these kinds of decisions. But what about the casualties? What about the externalities? What about the collateral damage? What about people who regret it because they've been nudged into doing this in their adolescence, or their early adolescence? Shout out to Red Falls Black. He says, this is unreality. This is anti-life. I said what I said. And shout out to this individual for actually, coming out and saying something about their feelings related to this matter, because I'm pretty sure these kind of people get blowback. As if they're traitors, for having exposed what, the rigors of this kind of process actually are. So let's watch a little more, man.
I don't know how to be happy in that. I don't know how to be okay with that. I hate when people are like, everything happens for a reason. Like, no, this didn't happen for a reason. It's just a tragedy. Just call it what it is. I don't want to use the word indoctrinated, but I was young and I was sad and I was impressionable and I thought that this would fix everything.
Oh. Do you hear?
Damn.
This to me is the exploitation of adolescent vulnerability during the time of puberty in order to promote a particular kind of gender politics. And as far as I'm concerned, that's sick to me, man. You're going to use children in order to promote your own particular political viewpoint? They're going to be ground zero in order to promote and to push a particular philosophical ideal or ideology, which basically comes from post-structuralism. Look, I'm a philosopher, okay? I've been trained professionally to be a philosopher, okay? And I understand post-structuralism. I know the origins of it. But I mean, for crying out loud, not everybody is going to be on board with deconstruction, right? With this new way of looking at the world where everything is fluid and you don't want any oppressive binary, categories that restrict, your ability to ebb and flow out of different kinds of performances and so on and so forth. Like, not everybody's going to subscribe to that particular philosophical orientation. And I think that they're trying to ram this shit down everybody's throat.
Right.
But it's cool for you to ram it down an adult's throat. It ain't cool in that regard either. But but to do it to adolescents? Now, you already know how this will play out for black boys.
Oh, my goodness.
You got black boys who are primarily being raised in single mother households, like you said earlier, who are encouraging their children, oh, just be who you want to be. They already have a problem with men, many of them. Their fathers weren't around. They have some antipathy for men. And they have a son who, you know, is going through an awkward stage in their lives, and everywhere around them, they're receiving contemptible caricaturizations about who they are and what they can and what they should be. And you even had a trans person who was talking to Dr. Umar, you know, about how regressive black men are, how they not really stepping up to the plate, whereas black women are taking their oppression, throwing it up in the air and turning it into fucking magic.
And you noticed in that discussion, if you remember, if you know the people listening remember it, how many times Hope kept saying "we" and "y'all" when she was referring to black women and black men, right? She kept positioning. Yeah, I keep going back to the pronouns. That's how difficult it can be. But Hope kept transitioning, you know, this whole discussion into her into locating. See, that's what I'm talking about. Man, it even catches me off guard. Anyway, the way the conversation kept going, black men were the problem, and Hope, you know, completely disconnected from any kind of relation to black men so comfortably, so smooth that I understood why Umar was upset not only with the discussion but with Tammy and Fox Soul, and he was right to be. He said I had a right to know. He said I would have approached that conversation differently. But just the positioning in the discussion of one's identity, as it were, it was real smooth.
And this is the thing, this is where it becomes disingenuous to me, right? So you basically can argue that there really is no gender. It's all fluid. You can be what you want to be at the declaration of you just deciding to be that. Okay? Like there are different philosophical orientations between subjects and objects. You get what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. About things and your interpretation of things that are out there in the world. There are different philosophical orientations between epistemology and metaphysics. I know I'm using big ass large words, but the reality is there's a whole Thomist or Aristotelian philosophical tradition which basically says that there are things out there in the world and human beings can describe them. It's not just things are what you think they are. Things are more than what you just labeled them to be. But we can't even get into that conversation, the epistemological and metaphysical conversation, because one particular brand of thought, one particular ideal or set of philosophical ideals are useful in order to promote a way of life for a certain group of people, or a minority group of persons, by the way. A small number of people. And I know that might be problematic in relation to race, but come on, bro. Let's just be clear, man. Most people in the United States, man, are not trans people, man. Most people in the black community are not trans people.
And that speaks to the ascendancy of language as the defining factor of life, right? If we empower language to define all things, then all of a sudden you can create whatever identity you want to, as long as you give a name to it.
And that's a problem to me. Like there's nothing about. Go ahead. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off.
Go ahead.
There's something in the world that pushes back against your ideals of the way you want the world to be. Now, I'm not saying that you should not push back against the world. I mean, and that's what human beings do. We try to terraform the environment in order to, you know, make it beneficial for us. And I'm not saying we should not do that, but at the same time, there are some things that are essentially connected to biology in our makeup and in our development. They can't be divorced. We can't just abstract away, predicated upon our ideals, from the teleology of our biological nature. I said before, every human being is born with a body. You might not like the body that you're born in. You might not like your race. You might not like your sex. But damn it, just to be born in and of itself, ontologically, to be here is a fucking blessing, man. It is a blessing to be here. And you're taking kids who are vulnerable. I said it's an awkward stage in their development when they're tending teleologically. They're moving towards biological development the way that nature has, for the most part, ordained it. Now, I'm not saying like if there's a malady, a defect in your biology, it can't be corrected. Yeah, it can be. Like if you're born with a heart defect, if you're born with a lung defect or a limb defect, that you can work to try to ameliorate your condition. But we're taking kids who have perfect genitalia, perfect biological attributes that would make them grow into a mature adult male or female. We're taking that and saying, well, on the pretext of their understanding of who they are and who they want to be, we can just alter that. We can alter that. And we're seeing the consequences of this, because everybody is not going to just rest and be seated in this kind of decision, especially if the decision is made in the formative years of their lives, man. That's why we don't allow 14-year-olds to drink and drive or to vote or to start up lines of credit, because we know that the decisions that they're making are not going to be based upon long and deep-seated reflection. But let's watch a little bit more, man.
I don't know what to do with like any of it. I think I just feel a lot different also though from most detrans girls or detrans women, detrans girls and women, because I've had bottom surgery. Like every girl I know has it. You know, they still have this part of them. And I don't have that. Like, I don't have anything anymore.
Ow.
It's just so sad. Like, it just sucks so bad. This is just something I'll have to live with. You know, there's like no fixing it. There's no making it better. I have to live like this for the rest of my life and figure out a way to be okay with it. It's so scary and terrifying. It's like right now I don't see that. I don't see that path. Maybe it exists, but right now it just feels so hard to see. And I don't know the way forward right now. I've been doing like little things for myself. I think I bought myself this green bikini and that's been really nice. You know, it's been really nice to just wear. I don't wear it out, but just like wearing it in my bathroom in the mirror and dancing around to Beyonce and like just trying my best to feel empowered and embodied. And it just feels so like foreign in my body. I just feel so detached from it. It's hard to look at it, it's hard to like accept that it's mine. Doing little things though, it's like just trying to find joy, trying to feel okay. But it's just always there, you know, I'm always here. Anywhere I go, I'm there. So I know I'm on this like road to self-love and self-acceptance, all while mourning this life I should have had. This life that never got to see the light of day. I'm not making this video for like sympathy or anything, it's just I'm wanting to express what's honestly going on in my reality right now as a detrans woman, as a woman who thought she was trans and transitioned, lived as trans for 8 years, had top surgery, a full hysterectomy, bottom surgery, went all the way as far as one could go, and then woke up and realized that I made the biggest fucking mistake of my life.
Yeah.
I was so sure. You know, it's just crazy.
Wow.
Any comments?
I actually have to go back to something that was said earlier. This person said that I thought this was going to be the answer to all my problems. I thought I was going to feel a certain way once this was done. This is why what you were saying earlier about deep reflection is so important, and why children shouldn't be able to make these life-altering decisions in such fashion. Because you're dealing with a variety of things, especially when puberty kicks in. And there's so much that's unresolved that you don't know what you're making decisions about. This person thought that the things that were on the table, disrupting things, emotional issues, that these things would be resolved with a surgery. And look at the fallout of it.
Man, look, I know that before, a surgery like this can be performed, you have to go through psychological evaluations, psychiatric evaluations. You have to have mentoring. Your parents have to give sanction to it, you would think. And, just the mixed messages out there. I mean, this person was basically like, they say, well, I'm not going to say I was indoctrinated. I just disagree. I disagree, man.
Absolutely.
I think you were indoctrinated.
Yeah.
Because if you believe that changing your sex is going to alleviate your personal social problems, then that's just absolutely false. There are no quick fixes to psychosocial problems, man.
No, not at all.
There never has been and there never will be quick fixes to psychosocial problems and pathology, man.
No, there won't. But when you compound this with the internet, with these groupings of people where they're having these ongoing conversations, even indoctrinating types of conversations, and then you have young impressionable minds coming into those spaces. I mean, what I think we're dealing with on a number of levels is a trend that has caught on to such a degree that it's being applauded at almost every level. And it's being, and many of these kids are being targeted in a way with this idea that whatever problems you're having can be resolved with this. But it's such a major trend. You got people identifying on surveys as LGBT, even though there's nothing in their life practice that suggested that. But it's become so cool. I got students who identify with all kinds of different pronouns, but when you actually ask them about their daily practice, none of it necessarily lines up. It's just become the thing to do. How does a child swim upstream against that?
Right. So, I mean, primarily everybody's pushing this now. This is like the progressive politics of our day. And, I've had students who've transitioned who, told me to use different sets of pronouns, and I've slipped up here and there. But I mean, for the most part, I tried to honor what it is that, they wanted to be identified as. But at the same time, I just feel like, look, this what we're doing to kids, man, is fucked up, bro. Basically, we're saying that this is like liberatory. This will free you from all of your anxiety. What it does is it creates more anxiety. Like back in the day, you got, kids, man, who are going through adolescence are always going to be rebellious, man. Like kids going through puberty and shit like that, it's an awkward stage in their lives. And I remember Camille Paglia saying something to the effect of, in the 40s and 50s, young kids going through puberty, they would like, especially boys or whatever, they wear leather jackets and become beatniks or something like that. Or, in the 60s, kids would become hippies. Now the thing to do is to just become a trans person. Now, I mean, you can reverse being a hippie. You can reverse being a beatnik. But you can't reverse bottom surgery.
No.
That's the difference, man.
Ain't no going back.
That's the difference. And look, we want, like I said before, and I'll say it again, what I'm not trying to do is to marginalize or stigmatize anybody. I've said it before, I'll say it again. If a fully developed adult, biologically, decides to change their sex or gender after rational thought and reflection, then I see no problem with them going ahead with irreversible sex reassignment surgery. Because it's your body, it's your choice. But the same can't be said of a prepubescent child. Like, I mean, as a child, what were some of the, fantastical things that you desire for yourself? I mean, think about it. How did you imagine yourself as a 14 or a 13-year-old, a 15-year-old? You thought you had all the answers to all the questions, didn't you? You thought you had everything worked out, didn't you?
Pretty much.
But you didn't really know shit. Not at 13, 14, and 15. You don't have any answers to any of the game.
Said any of the game.
You don't.
Right.
Not at 13, 14, and 15. You just don't have enough practical wisdom in order to make decisions that will have an impact over the long haul of your life. Right. Or anybody else's life for that matter. However, when it pertains to this, we go all in. It's all or nothing. All or nothing. All to do what? To promote a particular set of values and norms associated with gender for 2 to 3% of the population?
Yeah. Yeah.
I personally, I don't understand it. I can understand if you're an adult and you want to do this. I can't understand a prepubescent child being given the green light to do this. Or somebody who's 16, 17 years old. I don't understand it.
I think you said it earlier, though. I mean, it's the definition of progressivism right now, right? This is what it means to be progressive, to support people no matter the age of whatever they think they might be, and to support it to the full extent. I mean, that's what's considered progressivism now. If you stand up as a parent and say, no, I would not allow my child to have bottom surgery, you get cussed out in public and online. People will come at you because you've made that kind of a statement. That's how much of a trend this has become.
Bruh, check this out, right? So I watched this movie. I think BGS sent it to me. It's called What is a Woman? Okay. Right. And you had the white dude, I guess he's part of the political right. And he went around asking gender professors, gender activists, trans activists, can you identify for me what a woman is? And everybody, of course there was editing in the video, so I'm not going to say he was actually being charitable to the people in their explanation or definition of what a woman actually is. But I mean, even given the context of that, he was able to edit and to cut and to piece together, a certain kind of narrative. I mean, you have to admit, though, these people were dodging the fucking question. Because they really don't have a definition for what a woman is outside of the context of some shit that they know that, for the most part, is almost indefensible. The only people who don't answer questions directly or people who equivocate and falter, they got something to either hide or they're trying to, continue to proliferate a whole bunch of bullshit. Talk to me in common sense terms, man. Don't use graduated terminology. Don't make reference to post-structural concepts. Just come straight out and say, what is the shit?
Yeah, but that's usually the part of the interview when you demand that, where the interview ends. Because we've seen, even in that documentary, how many people walked out or canceled the interview in the middle of when he would ask, more direct questions. Or state that what you're saying doesn't make sense. Break it down in a more casual way. They took offense and shut it down.
Well, because they knew that they couldn't answer the question directly because they're politicians or they're scholars and they don't want to offend anybody. Okay? And, at the end of the damn documentary, he asked his wife, like, okay, well, what is a woman? An adult female.
Right.
Who wants a fucking jar opened, okay? Who wants you to open this can, okay? Here. So he opens the can and was like, damn. But I went all around the world or the United States looking for an answer to this question, and she just answered the shit flippantly.
Actually stayed home.
I mean, that was the connotation, the implication of that, right?
Right.
And then, of course, he had the guy, I can't recall the name of the individual who made up the video. I'm pretty sure that there are people who are upset at him or whatever the case may be. But, I mean, there was a detransitioner, a white detransitioner on that show as well. And they were also pissed.
That was the most powerful interview in the entire film. To me.
I mean, that individual was pissed.
Yeah.
And the question is, how many more people who have gone through this process, how much further information is going to be revealed, that this shit is, quite frankly, it's a bunch of sickness, man. And we're pushing this shit to children now. Like, we're pushing this on children. But the retort will be, well, we're pushing gender on children as it is anyway. We're already pushing a particular narrative about gender anyway. This is just an alternative, so what's wrong with the alternative? Well, the alternative is irreversible. The alternative requires the imposition of drugs that block the development of estrogen and testosterone. That's different. That's a whole nother part of the game, man. That's a whole nother part of the game. We're almost at the end of this video. I really feel for this person, man. Yeah. It's like, just imagine being a 14 and a 15-year-old today. And you feeling depressed. And you don't know who you are or what you want to be. There's going to be a group of people trying to nudge you and tell you, well, it's about, like the oppressive stereotypes of gender that are like creating this depression in you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And be a parent with a child with a smartphone and see how much you can actually keep them going into spaces that you know nothing about and having conversations that you know nothing about, making life decisions about everything from what they believe to what they're going to do in spaces you have no idea even exist.
Man, let's finish watching it and then we could be done with watching this, man. And then, I'm gonna see if some people want to have any commentary about it at all. But
it's all really hard right now. I'm like in the thick of it. I think accepting that I am detransitioning was hard, but there was a reason why it took so long, and that reason was definitely to try and avoid the unavoidable, which is all of this pain, all of this mourning, all of this loss, all of this like wreckage that I feel like I now have to sit with and try to figure out how to make a life out of and bring in some kind of like reverence, some kind of like positivity, some kind of light. But it's so hard, because I don't feel like that about any of it. I'm angry, I'm sad, I'm consistently questioning like why this happened to me, how did this happen to me? Anyway, got some cool, exciting stuff starting in my life that is keeping me going right now. And while I'm processing all this like really deep, painful stuff, it's nice to have that. It's nice to have my green bikini. It's nice to have that.
Man, that's sad to watch, bro. I'm just keeping it 100, bro. That's that's hard to watch, bro.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna tell you why. Because in the context of going through that kind of trauma and that kind of psychological pathology, bro, the only thing that gives them solace, or the thing that most gives them solace, is a green bikini man.
Right. It worn in private in one's own bathroom to dance around to Beyonce.
Bruh.
Yeah.
Bruh.
That's the only way you can find peace. That's a sad statement.
Bruh. What are we doing to these kids out here, man? That's the question. Like, like what are we doing to these kids out here?
When I point out that it's a trend, I really do think about that because I ran across an article a number of months ago, and BGS and I were just talking about this the other day. That basically stated that 23% of Black women now identified as bisexual, right? I ran across another article, and I can send you the links to all of this stuff, but this one came up on News Gallup, and it basically said, um, where'd it go? Here we go. Damn, just left. Oh, there it is. It said basically that in the United States, um, it estimates by what is it? I'll just read it. So, U.S. adults estimate that nearly 1 in 4 Americans are gay or lesbian. Right. This is where we are now. Most people assume the rates are over 20%. But the interesting thing is when I looked at a study done by Gary Gates of UCLA's Williams Institute. This is a think tank that specializes in law and public policy related to sexual orientation. Gates estimated that the population of those who identify as lesbian, gay, bi, and trans are 3.8%. So we've gone from a UCLA estimate that takes the position of about close to 4% of the population. But when it comes to these estimates that are done by survey, most people believe that the rates are nearly a quarter of the population. This is where we are with this now. So it's become so normalized that it's and this is, I think, the goal, especially in media, is to normalize it to where people shouldn't have to be stigmatized, which is I don't believe people should have to be stigmatized, but the normalization of it beyond what's measurable could be detrimental, and I think it leads to situations like what we just watched. If you're going to make the argument that a quarter of the population fall in this category, and the only reason you can get there, even in these kind of estimations, is you notice they have to group these populations together to increase the number. Because there was a period of time where lesbian, gay, bi, these people didn't identify as a unit. They didn't see themselves as a solid identity. The linkage of LGBT in and of itself is a construction that really never existed. And now it's used to designate a people of sorts. That in itself is a construct that never existed. So you have that kind of dynamic. But even within those that, I don't know if you ever looked at what they call intersex.
Yeah.
Right. Those who identify or those who are considered hermaphroditic or whatever, there's so many nuances to how that's even defined. But the estimates there, and I don't know how they come to these estimates, are that you have 1 or 2 people out of 100 born intersexed. But when you look at what they define as intersexed, I mean, there's so many different areas to it and definitions that may not actually be connected to one another, but they've been grouped in a particular way. So this grouping in and of itself is what I'm looking at. And I'm raising questions, and I'm not saying I have the answer, but I'm raising questions about to what extent do these groupings also constitute part of the trend of
Right.
suggesting that this is the norm.
Man, it's all I can say is, bro, like when I was in graduate school, right? There was an article that we had to read, and it was about if It's like 5 sexes or something like that. I can't remember the exact name of the article, but I'm gonna look for it. But it's like they're like so-called 5 sexes or something like that. what's the name of this damn article, bro? But the point is, the number of people who are actually undergoing that kind of process where their genitalia is neither male nor female is kind of ambiguous. That's not that's a small number of persons, bro. Very small. And their problem was, well, because people are born with this ambiguous genitalia, what the doctors want to do is they want to say, okay, well, the ambiguity can't exist. We need to either make the child male or female. Okay. And so, there were a group of activists who said, well, this is oppressive.
Mm-hmm.
But then the question is, okay, well, if this is a medical issue and we want to rectify the issue, well, I mean, like, are we wrong? Are we acting unethically in trying to create some normalcy for a child? Because let's face it, being born with like deformed genitalia is not normal.
But this is why the numbers become important. Because one documentary that I used to show in classes years ago, actually, the way they put it, they said, okay, if we come back to this question of intersex, and if 1 or 2 out of every 100 people born are intersex, the guy said this. He said that means in a city like Atlanta, there are about 4,000 intersex folks. So when you say there might need to be a surgical or medical procedure to correct this, if you're talking about just one, child that's born, whatever, that makes sense. But when you identify 4,000 people in the city, now it takes on the presentation of a people, you know what I mean, of a group. And now what you're saying is viewed as potentially oppressive and exploitive, because now we have this population. But I don't know how we verify that. I've never seen it verified. All these estimates that seem to fall out of the damn sky that suggest how normal and everyday this is. And we take it, but we don't often question, where do these numbers actually come from?
Well, okay, so I do have the name of that article now. It's called "The 5 Sexes: Why Male and Female Aren't Enough," or "The 5 Sexes Revisited." I think the article has been amended. And "Why Male and Female Aren't Enough" is written by Ann Fausto Sterling. Okay. And so I'm not going to go into the intricacies of that, but I mean, the whole paper is centered around, well, what do you do? How do you respond? How is the medical profession supposed to respond to genital abnormalities that don't fit into a binary? I mean, like, what do you do? I mean, and the conversation grew from there to now take on all different kinds of meanings. I mean, like, it's transmorphed from, like, how do you deal with intersex children or infants to, like, now you can just decide if you want to be male or female. It's like a whole different ball game now. I'm sorry, there was somebody who wanted to join in the conversation, but I didn't bring them in quick enough. But bruh, this, and the only other layer to this, to me, when it comes to black boys, like, first of all, you already get these demeaning and contemptible understandings of who you are and what your potentiality are. How does this impact and affect the puberty process for young boys, man? How does it impact them? This was a black boy who basically transitioned into a girl and had bottom surgery. Yeah. And they're wondering, how did this happen to me?
And they're dealing with these questions in, early elementary. And I think to a child's mind, it's offering options and choices. You know, now you're just not a boy or girl by birth. Now you can choose from any of this list of genders to express yourself. It's being presented almost on a platter to be chosen from. So you got
Okay,
kids
so
coming home telling their parents that this is what they are now.
all I'm saying is, hey, so we got one, we have an activist here who apparently, is a gender justice warrior, Pam Rank, and she says that a woman is whoever identifies themselves as a woman. And, I mean, that sounds good. I mean, it sounds liberatory, but I mean, that all begs the question, like, are there any objective things out there? Like, I mean, one of the things that many, thinkers, because feminists are not all in agreement with one another, right? So, like, for example, Camille Paglia, who considers herself to be a trans person to some degree or another, she laments the fact that when you get women in gender studies programs now in the universities, when you have them, there is no study of biology at all in these programs. There's nobody who really actually is taking sincere and earnest consideration about biology in these programs. Now, the question is, how can you have a fucking program that's dedicated to sex and gender and not have any biological component interpolated into it at all? It's all just post-structural ideology and philosophy. Like, how is this even rational?
And it only operates in this context because the question of, is there anything empirical? Is there anything measurable? Anything we can identify outside of ideology that defines this? That's always dismissed. But let that conversation be about race or class and watch how quickly those options no longer exist. If I want to identify as a wealthy person, at what point does my credit change? At what point do banks deposit resources in my account to suit my new identity? Right. And it sounds ridiculous. And I know it sounds ridiculous, but it sounds just as ridiculous in a lot of different contexts, but it's only in this one context where it's acceptable. You can't even do it with race. We know Rachel Dolezal tried to do the same thing. It was a laughable concept that people dismissed.
Well, I said a long time ago, okay, so there was a conference that I attended, and, there was this discussion about transracialism, okay? And Rachel Dolezal, it was the time at which, the whole controversy surrounding her, racial makeup was like what it was all happening at the time this conference was occurring. And, one of my main arguments was, look, we know that race is a social construct, correct? I mean, I think for the most part, on a biological basis, we can confirm that there are no really substantial differences between different persons of races genetically. Like, for example, I can have more in common genetically with a white person than with a black person. How? Well, if my mother happens to be white, I can have more in common with my mother genetically than any other person in the world, typically, right? I share part of her fucking DNA. Okay? So we know that race is a construct. However, you can't identify yourself as the member of an opposite race because of the historical context of the experiences of persons related to race. Okay, so, but when it comes to biological grounds, and I've said this before, if there's any way physically to demarcate biologically differences between persons, it will be between men and women. Like, I mean, women or females, put male and female. Let's use those terms then, since some people will object to that, right? Because they'll say that woman in and of itself is a set of social constructs. Okay? But a male cannot give birth.
You know they disagree with you on that, right?
Well, I mean, no, they can't disagree. It all depends. If you say that sex and gender are different, you can't say that a male can give birth. You can say that a man can give birth, but you can't say a male can give birth. No, I'm not going to give way to that, because that's semantic bullshit. Okay?
But this is where
based on their own definitions.
Where it's going. This is what I'm saying, though. This is where it's going. They're trying to dissolve the categories to the fullest extent. And much of the time, they're doing it by using case examples. You go to the chat, Pam Rank, who you just pointed out, said, I happen to have known someone who had a child who was both male and female. The child had male genitalia on the outside and female on the inside. The parents had to decide to choose. Now, here's the thing. Okay, if we take you at your word with no verification that this occurred, how common is that? And why does it come up in a discussion? Why is this relevant? If you had one case of this that actually verifiably took place and no evidence that it ever took place, or we have no data on that beyond that, why does that one piece of evidence somehow now, how is that supposed to impact the entirety of the discussion? But that's the argument style that people are using. That's the form of argumentation they're using. They're taking individual anecdotal cases that we don't even have to request evidence about, and somehow that's supposed to influence the discussion. And we're going to dissolve. This goes back to that whole question of the ascendancy of language. We're going to dissolve all of these concepts, terms, and what we consider to be scientifically verifiable realities by shifting the language and allowing case situations to dissolve what we think we know, so that everything is everything. And there really is no quantitative difference between things, because it's all based on how we choose to interpret and describe things. Because I know a guy who knew a guy who knew a girl who did this. And that's that's actually considered an argument.
Bruh, but like all I can tell you is you're going to continue to see cases like this young individual here. Yes. Who regret what they've done, because the surgery is irreversible if you get bottom surgery, especially if you're a male. I mean, there are some people in Theos de Tinagas who argue that there is like demonstrable racial differences between persons, but I mean, think about it. Like, how dramatic are these differences? And then how do you classify or categorize a race of persons? Based upon their skin color? Based upon their geographical location? Like, I would never argue that like different populations of persons have different, genetic markers. I would not say that. I would say that, different people born in different populations and geographical areas are going to have different kinds of genetic markers, because most organisms are going to respond to their environment biologically. So they're going to develop different defense mechanisms to ward off diseases and so on and so forth. That's why you have, in Africa, there's a lot of sickle cell anemia. So there are genetic traits related to race according to population and geographical location. But then the question becomes, do these kind of genetic markers lead to essential differences, like we, define them by the eugenic races of the 18th and the 19th centuries, such that, there's a character and a kind of disposition that different people from different races have.
And yet we've seen that codified in policy, where they could even tell you the number of drops of Negro blood that determine your racial categorization.
Like, look, to me, it just seems like one of the fundamental differences between, because there is sexual dimorphism in the human species, We're not the only species that exhibits sexual dimorphism.
Mm-hmm.
It happens in a large number of primate species. It just happens. It may not happen in the canine species. It happens in some insect species. But the question is, look. So when people start talking about, typically when we talk about race, we say that it's basically some shit that the white folks made up in the 18th century during modernity in order to justify the classification of persons into human and non-human to justify exploitation. That's typically like what the argument is in the academy, okay? But when it comes to gender, like, what? Like, are we going to deny that there are certain groups of people who are born with the capacity to bear children because they have uteri? Right? And they have labia. They have like fully functioning biological components and parts that allow them to give birth to children. And there's some people who are born that don't.
Here's another part of the discussion that's also not being had. We're taught in this era that these kinds of sexual differences are a product of birth, that people are born. We used to think they were male and female. Now we're finding that they're all kinds of different things. And this just happens. They're just born that way, right? This is why if you go watch The Woman King, there's a gay male or trans character in there. And this is a clear political statement being made, because one of the arguments about this is there have always been trans and gay folk throughout human history and in Africa, as opposed to many African-centered people who've argued that that was something that whites brought into the table. I'm not even really engaging that discussion. What I'm interested in is in the last 50 to 100 years, how much the chemical changes in our diet and in the environment that we produce, often through waste that gets into the air, into the water. I'm questioning to what extent those things have helped to contribute to the things that we're starting to see biologically taking place. Many of us have heard about Tyrone Hayes' work through UC Berkeley, studying the impact of atrazine, shifting the genders of frogs. And we started to raise. Now you don't hear from Tyrone that much anymore. I heard from him for a little bit, and then he just kind of disappeared. But
you know why he disappeared?
But the questions are still on the table. To what? And then you have to deal with increased media, right? So it's I remember getting into a debate one Thanksgiving with a friend of the family, and we were trying to figure out if there were actually more LGBT people now than 100 years ago, or was it that there was more media attention and now there's an identity that's been named and a set of personalities that go with those terms that So which was it? Was there more people? Was it just a cultural shift? Was it a media shift? But then I'm asking the question, what about this impact on the lifestyle we as a society live in regard to technology and environment? To what extent has that also contributed to this? But you're not supposed to talk about that because everybody's just born this way. If you make it a product of potential environmental waste or so on and so forth, now you're suggesting that these people, excuse me, that various people are subject to the environment, that they would not have existed otherwise, and you can't have that. So there are a lot of these dimensions to this that nobody wants to add into the discussion, but I think if we're going to have the discussion, those questions need to be asked.
Well, the reason why those questions are not asked is because biology isn't perceived as being a significant component of women and gender studies. It's just not. It's not. They don't explore the biological components of gender formation. Right. That's off the map for them.
Yes.
Because it leads to uncomfortable, data points that might debunk some of the, recent proclamations that they've made within the context of, their politics. It just is what it is. Some things, like in the academy, this is what ought to be the case. That no stone should be left unturned. No area of inquiry should be left off of the table. Everything should be, open to critique and falsification. But that's not what we're getting in this particular branch of academic inquiry. We're not getting it. And this is why I say, look, I love philosophy, but I understand its weaknesses. I do, and especially in this day and age, we have different ways of engaging in epistemological, inquiry. We understand that there's a difference between, ever since Hume declared, you can make matter-of-fact statements or you can make relations of ideas statements. You can make propositions of an analytic kind or of a matter-of-fact kind that have to be verified by actually using your senses. You have to use empirical data in order to try to determine the truth or the falsity of the proposition. Okay? Unfortunately, philosophy primarily deals with relations of ideas propositions, categorical propositions that don't have to be verified by experience at all. And that's problematic to me, man. I mean, to have an area of inquiry that just proclaims that we think it, so it is. And we're just going to get, if I can get enough people to buy into it and to repeat it over and over and over again, then it becomes the truth by default. Right. That to me is not, it's not a good kind of academic practice. It's or a way of engaging in epistemological inquiry, man. It's to me it's lacking. It's deficient. That's why I'm a naturalist. I say that we should temper our ideas with other, other disciplines. We have to take an interdisciplinary approach. Right. And we can't leave off disciplines that we think might interfere or intervene or interrupt what it is that we developed inside of a bubble. That shit shouldn't work. But in the academy, it works precisely because, everybody's trying to be woke and, to include people. Like right now, the paramount kind of politics in the academy is the politics of recognition. It just is what it is. It's not the politics of truth. It's the politics of recognition. I want to be perceived as valuable. I want to be acknowledged. My claims to truth have to be, to some degree, accommodate. And I'm, my viewpoint on this is like, how far can that go? That just, to me, that reduces to relativism. And I'm not with that shit. I can't get with that kind of viewpoint on academic inquiry. I just can't move like that. If there is no truth and everything is just a matter of subjective acceptance, then everything elides into either nihilism, subjectivism, or skepticism. And to me, I'm not, I can't roll like that. I'm not willing to go there. Everything becomes true. Mm-hmm. Tomorrow I could become a woman. Why? Because I say I am. And nobody can stop me. Who the fuck would be able to stop me?
Right. Can I share something, bro?
Go ahead.
I'm preoccupied with this whole question of the environment. That's one of the things that I'm interested in regard to these issues around sexuality, so on and so forth. And I think we greatly underestimate the impact. There were a number of articles that came out in the last few years dealing with this whole question of forever chemicals, microplastics, right? And there's a couple things I wanted to share about that. So on one end, one article I'm looking at, actually, they're talking about how completely hyper available microplastics are around the earth. They found them in the Mariana Trench and at the top of Mount Everest. They found in the dust and food and the drinking water.
Wow.
They found them in human placentas and in baby bottles.
Wow.
I'm gonna read you this section here. It says, because it's in the food we eat, the water we drink, and the air we breathe, the average American ingests about 50,000 microplastic particles each year and inhales about the same amount according to a 2019 analysis. Another study from 2021 estimates that the average person ingests a credit card's worth of plastic each week. Other research has discovered plastic in infant and adult poop, but that just particles that pass through the digestive system without getting absorbed. Microplastics' presence in the human placentas suggested that they were traveling through the blood, but it wasn't direct proof. This is the first definitive evidence of plastics absorbing into human bloodstream where they can travel all around the body. So you got that, right? There's another one that points out that exceeding levels of microplastics and forever chemicals are in rainwater. Tiny plastic particles less than 5 millimeters in diameter, called forever chemicals, colloquial term, for per and polyfluoro. I don't even know how to pronounce that. PFAS are a class of human-made chemicals that are hard to break down and have been around since the 40s. So what I'm saying is, we have no sense whatsoever what is happening in the environment and how it's impacting the body. We greatly underestimate it. Everything I just read was just dealing with microplastics. We ain't talked about any other environmental issue yet. But we're going to have a conversation about how this is normal and this has been happening, since forever. We just haven't noticed, that a quarter of the human population is LGBT. We just never noticed it until a year or two ago. That's what we're being told. We just never noticed it.
Man, look, they already have. Let me show you this, man. I'm gonna share the screen because look, and then we're gonna be done with this, man. Let me see, let me see, plastics and gender. This shit is crazy, bro. Can you see the screen?
Yeah.
Phthalates, okay. Gender fluidity and hormone disruptors, okay. Recent evidence indicates that phthalates from plastic and polychlorinated biphenyls are one of many factors predicting gender dysphoria, particularly in the case of male to female transgenders. I mean, there are people doing the research, but the research is not coming to the fore because it doesn't co-align with the political precepts of a particular kind of, a particular kind of ideology. It doesn't promote those values and norms.
Exactly. We can't talk about it.
We can't have a discussion because it's going to create, and then there's always the slippery slope argument that's made. Well, this is going to lead to violence and death. To even broach the subject is to promote violence and death for certain populations of persons who've declared themselves to be oppressed and misrecognized. This is where we are with this. So another, and this is back as far as 2016. There's also evidence of sexually dimorphic neural behavioral changes in rodents exposed prenatally to phthalates.
There we go.
Play behaviors, which are an accepted method to determine gender identity in children, are a critical factor in diagnosing gender dysphoria, according to the American Psychiatric Association. Okay? Not saying that that's the sole cause or the primary etiology behind this phenomena, but I mean, given the context of some of the things that the brother, who was doing, he was doing the rounds in media and everything, talking about plastics in the environment and how this is having an impact on gender health. Mm-hmm. He's been cut out of the conversation.
Yes.
Or it's not popular enough. Like what we're getting is, a bunch of Mary Sue and, all kind of crazy shit on TV promoting the furtherance of acceptance of people who are falling into the categories of gender dysphoria.
Yeah, I tried to get Tyrone on my show for 2 years. Couldn't even get an email response. Don't know his status whatsoever.
He probably doesn't want to be sucked into this whole kind of, debate. But, I mean, shit. At the end of the day, it is what it is, man. A lot of these guys are scared, man. You know, they're just scared.
Right.
So if they're scared, I mean, you know, it is what it is. It is what it is. They don't want to be identified with being regressive politically. And this is an issue. This is a problem.
Right. The subtext to raising these questions about the relationship between the environment and this whole question of gender dysphoria is that, in essence, if you argue that these things exist, then you're essentially saying that LGBT populations are mutants. They're just a product of, environmental waste, right? And so it's taken as an attempt to dehumanize and dismiss people and make them other. And therefore, in response to that possibility, we can't talk about it at all. But if these things are actually impacting the environment and they're impacting people to such an extent where it is changing our biology, it is changing how our neural pathways function. If that is the case, it needs to be talked about in relation to this, not as an attempt to dehumanize, but as an attempt to make sure we don't take the problem further than it is. Anyway.
Hey, bro. I guess the crowd of people who, pro-trans activists, man, they want more plastic out there. Damn. Please give me some plastic. Damn. I know that's ignorant for me to say, but hey, bro, we are where we are with this, bro. I just thought, that the testimony of that young person would be worth exploring and taking a look at. It's, to me, the dark side of transgender justice, man. Anytime you have children being subjected to political indoctrination or ideological acceptance at the most vulnerable point in their lives, where they don't know who they are, they don't know what they want to be, they don't know what they're growing into. To me, that's exploitation. I'm just keeping it a buck here, man. That's exploitation to me. You got exploitation from activists, academicians, medical professionals, drug companies.
Yep.
But everybody's in, like, all this shit is based on cash, man. Give me some money. A new source of income.
If you don't know how cold the game is, start looking at you. Matter of fact, there's a whole branch of YouTube where you'll find people lamenting these choices. The video we just watched wasn't isolated by any means. By any means, there are a lot of people on there talking about regretting the surgeries, the drugs they've taken, but they have nowhere to go with it at this point. They've made lifelong decisions, usually below the age of 20, sometimes below the age of 18, and they're stuck with their decisions. We don't know what the psychological impacts of that will be over time. We don't know what the biological ones will be. We have no sense whatsoever. But you're talking about people in their 20s who lament what they've already missed. They lament the fact that they're not going to ever have kids, that some of them can't even have sex, and they're going to watch a whole peer group go through the stages of marriage, reproduction, having kids, grandkids, and these persons are stuck in amber for the next X amount of years, rest of their lives in some cases. What does that do to people? Especially if we determine that the environment has played a role in this, alongside the fact that we made the shit a trend on the internet, to where it's considered the definition of being progressive, as you said earlier, to engage and entertain these ideas and be supportive of them to such a degree that if even a child under the age of 10 suggests that they may be a different gender, we support them going in and getting some kind of biological shift. These things are devastating, and they're already having an impact a lot of us don't really pay attention to unless you're in those realms.
Man, I just, hey, bro. I said before, and this is the last thing I'll say about this. If you decide to change your body or gender performances and you're an adult, that's on you. Do I think that it's oppressive if you're an adult and you make that kind of decision? No, I don't. But when you start exploiting pre-adolescents who are just beginning to, reach the precipice of puberty, and you start giving them powerful hormone blocking drugs, that to me is fucking sick to me, bro. It's fucking crazy. It's absolutely absurd. And not only that, if you have a body, man, be glad that you have one. I mean, it's a blessing to have a body. And we don't need all of the stereotyping and the caricaturization of what value or worth a particular kind of gender has. All of that just exacerbates all of these problems. It makes it almost impossible for a person who's young and impressionable to be able to navigate these kind of troubled waters. They don't know what to do. Especially young black kids coming up, man. It's like black boys. Like, what are the choices that you're going to make, man? And who's going to help guide you through the problem spots or the trouble spots in your life? Hopefully not some, ideological zealot who's going to tell you that there's a quick fix. Oh, you have gender dysphoria. Let's help you get through this. And then you go through a process like that young person there, and then you end up regretting it for the rest of your life. You have to live life as a eunuch. And the only solace you have is to dance around in the bathroom in a bikini listening to Beyonce. That's some sad shit, man. I feel for that. I just feel for that individual, man. It's sad. Mm-hmm. It's sad. Any closing remarks, Dr. Johnson? Because I got another little jizzle to get into.
Yeah, this is part one. We're gonna do a part two of this discussion on my show this Wednesday at 5 p.m. Pacific on the Onyx Report, my channel, Dr. T. Hasan Johnson here on YouTube. So this is gonna be a part two. And I get to hear Gigi weigh in on some of the things I'm gonna throw at him, which I actually can't wait to do. So, I'm looking forward to it. So join us. Go ahead. What were you gonna say?
No, I'm just laughing, man, because sometimes I get animated and I'm a little vulgar here and there. So
it's all good though.
But I say what I feel. I say what I think and feel.
Exactly.
And I don't hold my tongue.
Right.
I just the only problem this is just one dark side aspect of the gender justice movement, wokeism in the black community. Just one aspect of it. The other aspect of it is you got a lot of, black boys who are trying to hide from being a black male because, they already understand that it's a disadvantage to be a black male in the culture in which you live. So one of the ways to escape it is to just identify as being something else other than a black male. Mm. And now you can attribute magicalness to yourself.
He said magicalness.
I mean, just think how absurd this shit is, man. As a black man, to hear a group of people declare themselves to be magical on the account that they really actually, Tokyo drifting or like race car driver drifting behind some duplicitous shit that white women created to subvert the civil rights movement. But now you magical on that account?
Yeah.
That's a hellified statement to make.
And still focusing on shifting resources toward their demographic.
And then not only that, as they try to acquire resources and policy for themselves, they'll deride you from not having the capacity to develop it on your own. And then when you actually do take measures to do something about it, the first thing they do is they use the criminal justice system or the legal system in order to block anything that you try to propose under Title VII or Title IX. Because primarily the people who are blocking programs like My Brother's Keeper and, any like single sex education, you got these weird ass white motherfuckers doing this. Not to say black people ain't involved in it, because you got a bunch of black people who are. But you see a lot of white scholars, man, who are like, well, okay, well, here on grounds of the violation of sex discrimination policy, this cannot be ordained. This cannot be put into place. And then they mock us and flippantly denounce us as not having developed any measures, like we're bumpkin somewhere, sitting around with our hands, underneath our asses. And we not just doing anything because, we just don't have the acumen or the insight to do anything. We're just kind of like passively accepting our lot while black women are moving forward. When you basically just walking behind white women.
Pretty much.
I mean, and mocking us while you do it. And then you got motherfuckers who transition that's mocking us. You're born as a male and you mocking us. That's fucking insidious, man.
Yeah, that was what was so profound about watching Hope go back and forth with Umar and Cynthia G, because you actually have this complete social re-identification with a different racial gender demographic, a complete disassociation, even to the extent of condemning black men as a category for all kinds of patriarchal crimes. While technically speaking, you're part of the demographic you're condemning. But at no point do you notice that, because of the way that, Hope is able to distance entirely. And so we're seeing this, and I said this when we covered that interview, what we're seeing is the ability to put onto black men all of the social ills in the society, make black men responsible for it, and people can absolve themselves as long as they can just identify as either women or LGBT. If they can identify with anything other than being a heterosexual black male, they can absolve themselves of any connection to what we identify as oppressive. And that's where we are. Gender and sexuality has just become another way to do that.
Before I go, I want to show one more thing and then I'm out of here, man, okay? Because I got another show to do in about 10 minutes. And thank you so much for coming here, man. I want to show you this, right? I already showed it to you, but I don't know if you had the opportunity to actually look at it. So I got this email, right, from this brother by the name of JT. And he writes, GG on gayness. Can you see that?
Yeah.
So he says, hello, I recently saw your collab with Dr. Johnson about Hope and Cynthia G. I remember you saying you talk about more about black male homosexuality soon. I wanted to share some blog posts I've written on the topic from the perspective of a gay black male. Okay. And he says, one important point I want to stress in the case you don't want to click links from a random person. And this is what they say. What follows. The sisterhood posse cares most about someone buying into the idea that black men are oppressive. Being gay doesn't matter to them if you're masculine. For example, me, and or have common sense. For example, TS YouTube Blair White, who is hurting feelings by discussing detransitioners and issues of pushing trans on youth. This is a gay person now. Black male who identifies as gay is saying that there is a sisterhood that don't fuck with them because they're black male. They cisgendered and that means that they present as a male. Mm-hmm. Okay? So I encourage you, okay, I guess I'll leave a link, copy link address, and then you can go look and see what, this individual has written. So I'll leave a link to one of his articles here, okay? And that way you can kind of go over some of the things that they're saying. But, I mean, ultimately, this guy's, like, even black male gay people are feeling the crunch of the sisterhood. The gynocracy, as it were, as we call it.
Yeah. It'll be an interesting question to find out how new this is because, for example, with the rise of BLM, I noticed that heterosexual black men were pushed out, but trans, LGBT, all of that was welcome alongside black women, of course, and that became this unit that you couldn't penetrate. But yeah, thanks for sharing that. All I wanted to say before we close out is I started a channel, basically a TV channel. I hope you guys will support it. You can get to it on iPhone, Android. You can download the app. It's called the Onyx Network, or you can watch it on Apple TV, Android TV, Roku, Amazon Fire TV. And there's even a link to watch it online. So you can support the channel. Right now, I'm mainly dealing with a lot of my YouTube content, my Institute for Black Male Studies content, my Fresno State content, and I'll be reaching out to other content providers to see if they want to play any of their material on the channel. But it's 24/7 around the clock. It's free. It's accessible. We ask that you support the channel much the way you support YouTube, so we can continue to grow. But this is what it is. So
and I put a link. Congratulations on the the liftoff, because we expected to go into outer space, just like we see the picture here, but we expect it's like a rocket. We expect it to take off, but congratulations on that. And I've left a link in my comment section so that you can access the channel. Thank you. That you can get to it, man. Appreciate you being here, man, and much wishes of success for you and the channel, bro.
How much I appreciate that. Hopefully you guys will share it, let people know about it so folks can check it out.
Hey man, YouTube it's a good place, man, but like we can't rely on this place because they could deplatform us at any moment, and then like we won't have any alternative means by which to create content.
Yeah, and keep the videos you already made.
And one of the things you could do, you could back up all of your archives of videos on Google. Maybe I need to do a show on how you actually can do that
on Google Drive. Say Google Drive.
It might require you to have a Google Drive account because you need space in order to accommodate the content. But it's a procedure where all you gotta do is like hit a couple of clicks and it'll take all the shit you got on YouTube and download it in an archive so that you can have access to it. That way, if they decide to deplatform you, you'll still have access to your content not in just link form, but like in actual content form, like actual files. I know you've already done this, so I mean, it won't be useful to you, but you know what I'm saying.
No, I need to talk to you about that too. I had to do it the old school way.
For sure. But you don't want to have to click a link to every damn video you done made when you could just click a button and it'll go and grab all your shit. So but thanks for the brothers, man. Thanks. Shout out to T-Rex, Indigo Flow, Uncle Stu, who says salute, supporting the stream. Shout out to Judas Blues. Shout out to it's a host of people I haven't shouted out, bro. And I mean, it's a lot of space between contributions. I'm going through them right now. ICIP13, much appreciation to you, brother. Aaron Peters, much appreciation to you. I know it's a few others, but man, that's a lot of comments today, bro. But I knew that there would be associated with the topic. Thanks for the guy in the black suit. He said they wanted to expose buck breaking at the grand scale. Shout out to Dennis Sperling. Thank you so much. What's up, Uncle D?
Uh-oh.
Yeah, he says the adults around him pimped him out to promote this ideology. Shout out to Uncle D. Red Falls Black, shout out to him. This is unreality. This is anti-life. I said what I said. I think I hit him up, so that's the last individual. But at any rate, man, it's time to go, man. I got another stream to do, so let me go ahead and get to that. Thank you so much for coming in, Doc Johnson, and blessing us with your wisdom, man. Appreciate that.
Thanks for having me, man.
All right, I'll holler at y'all on the next one, y'all. Peace.